The O Cannabis Conference and Expo returns to Toronto June 1st through the 3rd, and there's still some good booth locations available. This exciting event is free for cannabis retailers and will feature Tommy Chong receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award at the O Cannabis Industry Awards. For more information about exhibiting or to register to attend, go to ocannabis.com. That's OCANNABIZ.com.
All right, today we've got Alec Langston. He is a budtender, a lead budtender at Dockside Cannabis in Seattle. So Alec, he's been a cannabis enthusiast for several years. He's been a budtender for I think about 5 years now, and also how long?
Just about, yeah, four
Nice.
years.
So you're also a medical marijuana consultant. You've got a passion for educating people about cannabis and bud tending. It's been a great outlet being a bud tender for that. So your goal is to help as many people experience a wonderful plant as possible. And your favorite part about the cannabis industry is changing the perceptions of cannabis skeptics. Watching your customers benefit from your guidance is incredibly rewarding, and you're looking forward to developing within the industry to meet new people along the way. Alec, thanks for being back on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely happy to be here.
All right. Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your cannabis business podcast. So we are having Alec Langston back on the podcast from August 2018 during HempFest. You were on a panel with some other folks. I recently ran into you again, which is crazy that you were still at the same place because budtenders have an amazing amount of turnover, and yet there you are getting promoted, still at the same place. And wanted to ask you the same questions, but as it pertains to the pandemic, because you made some interesting comments when I was in the shop last time, just kind of how the whole I'm trying to avoid the corona. I'm trying to avoid the beer virus name. And so we'll stick with pandemic, I guess. Tell me a little bit how that whole thing went down before I get into those questions. Like how did March roll out for you? Because we were deemed an essential business right off the bat, and you saw a bunch of people rolling in and basically buying everything off the shelf. Kind of tell me how that whole thing went down.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, when like quarantine right before that happened, and we didn't know if we were going to be open, I worked 2 weeks straight. I took shifts at different stores. Like we just had to have as much coverage as possible because there was a line out the door every single day, and just managing people's time in the store was the biggest thing because Dockside set a 5-minute limit to get people in and out as quickly as possible just for the safety of everyone. So kind of my usual thing is, give people as much information as possible, but I had to tone that down to just the essential information. So that first month was very fast paced. We were moving product like crazy. And I think the customers being more flexible was kind of the big thing that I had to get them to do, was just, not be so set on one or two products, to kind of just, get different things, or be open to getting different things than they usually were. That was the biggest thing.
So you kind of had to transition into like a transactional facility rather than just helping people like you normally would. It was pre-mask, I'm assuming, and pre-online order, not requirement, but
Right.
They were suggesting that you order online.
Yeah, that was, I mean, we had our average online orders is maybe like 80 a day. That first month and a half, it was more like 140, like 150 some days. So again, like having the staff to even cover those orders in a timely manner, that was another difficult hurdle. And then of course, making sure the order was correct when they actually got there. And that's a whole nother thing. Yeah, that's it.
So you were seeing anywhere from 50% increase to doubling in the amount that people were buying. Do you feel that what they were buying was meant for immediate consumption, or do you feel like they were hoarding cannabis like toilet paper?
I think some people were hoarding it for sure. Because I mean, a lot of customers, especially at Dockside, they like a variety of things, and that just increased. They weren't just buying like a couple grams to try. They were buying eighths, quarters, halves. They were maxing out on edibles. They were maxing out on everything. And yeah, there was definitely a couple people that would come in day after day to get as much as possible. Because they didn't know, like we didn't know it was going to happen. So it was just it was a hectic time for sure.
Were you finding issues from producers finding enough product to be able to put on the shelf? If you sold out and you notified those cultivators or processors, were they able to then bring product to you, or were they also short on product?
Yeah, they were feeling it. They were feeling it for sure. So that was the other thing, is like a lot of people are set on one or two brands, and when those would sell out, it was my job to be like, hey, I know you like this. It's not here right now. Try this and try this. So the thing that was really difficult, so was July and August actually, were all of the spring harvest for the outdoor and greenhouse people. They were gone. They were gone. They were all sold out, and they weren't prepared for that. No one was prepared for all that product to sell out that quickly. So July and August, we maybe had like 40% of what we were supposed to have in the store. So again, just reassuring customers like they can be flexible, that they have to be flexible and kind of just trust us to suggest the right things. Was building that trust was a difficult hurdle, I think.
So normally I wait to ask your crystal ball prediction at the very, very end, but I think it's the timing right now is good. So I'll ask you about the same thing with, November kind of being the late harvest. Everyone's pretty much done. Things are in the dryer, and we're kind of just waiting for, that crop to turn into a product. Do you think that there's going to be the same type of frenzy with buying if there's another lockdown? We're already seeing France and Paris in particular had a massive congestion where everyone's trying to get out of Dodge before their next lockdown. And I'm wondering, with the fires that we've recently had reducing supply in hemp and cannabis, if that's going to create an even frenzier moment where people stock up even more if there's a second wave of the pandemic, for example. What does your crystal ball prediction say, even though it's harvest season?
I mean, the biggest thing about this year is like it's hard to predict what's going to happen. Like it's all kind of up in the air. Like every day could be different from the next, right? Like Wednesday could be busier than a Friday, depending on what's going on. And I think the biggest thing too is the people who are working from home. That's who we're seeing the most of, right? They come in like weekly basis maybe, and then they stock up, right? And throughout the summer, when some people still had unemployment, that's people were still buying a lot then. What's going to happen with that? I mean, again, I think it's just up in the air. We take it day by day. There's no like set, this will be this.
Everything's up in the air. You just mentioned like Wednesday could be the busiest day of the week, when we all know that Fridays between the hours of 3 and 5 is when a third of all edibles are sold throughout the month, is that short period of window every week on a Friday. But with the pandemic, how has buying behavior changed with regards to the timing of it? Is it still Friday afternoon, or are you just seeing random times with the majority of people working from home?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is people are not going off their like normal schedule anymore. They're going off what is happening in the world around them. They're trying to gauge, what's not only the safest, but the opportune time to come in. So this week, Monday, Tuesday, we're super busy. We're super busy because, shit's been going down in Seattle, like people are kind of on edge with this election that's happening right now.
So they wanted to get it, assuming there would be an uprising or election interference or whatever, so they just hoarded it prior to the election.
Yeah, or like another curfew kind of situation, right? I mean, that was another thing when those curfews happened.
Now that was at 10 p.m., no restaurant, no bar. Everyone has to go home at 10.
Yeah. Well, the first day was at 5. We got a text, like an emergency text at the store. It was like curfew's at 5. And that was at 5 o'clock. we're at the store, And we get these texts and we immediately start calling the owners and just like, hey, like, what do we do? And they're like, close, like, go home, leave.
Whoa.
So like we had to shut it down immediately. So again, it's like, it's what's happening in the world around us that changes how we do business.
Wow. All right. I want to ask a couple of questions and just kind of recap this this whole thing, but frame it in the terms of the pandemic. So for those who don't know, a Budtender provides customer service to all patients and customers in medical recreational dispensaries. They use a point of sale system and other technologies to ensure that all cannabis sales are properly tracked, providing information to customers on product choices or consumption methods or compliance and safety, and remaining up to date on all cannabis regulations to ensure compliance. So you are at least 4 years into it. You've seen a lot. What is your favorite product now? Because I want to frame this like a lot of people have switched. Topicals are really expensive, and now that they're at home, they've switched to like edibles. So what was your favorite product like a year and a half ago, and has that changed? What's your favorite product now?
So I think the biggest thing is cost effectiveness and like, cannabinoid content. And that comparison has become a big thing. So during this year, I've been selling a lot more RSO, especially for the people who only do edibles. I'm like, hey, like if you want the most cost-effective edible product, it's activated concentrate. So I've been pushing that, and like, yeah, it's not like a delicious gummy, but you can do a lot more with it, right? So like, I'm still a flower guy. I love my flower, and Dockside's a big proponent of selling clean flower, right? So that was kind of my focus then, but now I'm trying to get people to experiment with a variety of products so they can find the most cost-effective and efficient, again, variety of products to get their needs met. So kind of just gauging everyone's how comfortable are people with experimenting is kind of a new thing for me, I'd say. Yeah.
I just picked up 25 grams of RSO myself for that same reason. Like if I'm going to do an edible, it's going to be RSO, even though it tastes like dirt for the most part. So what's the number one product that you're seeing customers buying right now? Not necessarily your recommendations or influence, but what's like the number one thing flying off the shelf?
I think basically larger packs of joints, like big, like, 10, 20, 30 packs of joints. Because people just want that convenience as well. Convenience is a big thing. So just, and again, like more, I guess a lot of people come in and say, hey, I want only sativa stuff because they don't want to be depressed, And that's another challenge for me, because especially in July and August, we were super low on any sativa labeled things. So I kind of had to play around with that and be like, hey, just because it doesn't say sativa on it doesn't mean it's going to be sleepy, stuff like that. So yeah, again, I think the number one product is probably like bigger packs of joints and then higher concentrated edibles, basically.
But what's your go-to?
People are maxing out on edibles like every time. They're doing the full pound limit, whatever it is. So.
Wow. And your number one go-to, what is it that you're finding yourself picking up most of the time?
So what I've started doing myself too is I've been trying to take like a daily dose of high CBD products. I utilize Fairwinds a lot. Fairwinds does a good job in terms of including every type of plant compound you could want, and then in convenient, like extended release capsules too. And all these capsules, they have different things. You can do AM, you can do PM. There's some for body pains, there's some for anxiety. And that's been another thing, is like, hey, I know you're used to like, this one specific genetic, but hey, maybe you try this tincture out and you can kind of supplement your use with that. So I've been pushing that a lot, just for like a consistent dose, I guess.
Yeah. Fairwinds is one of the top two brands, I think, between Green Revolution and Fairwinds. They kind of hold the number one spot for me in Washington, and they just have that trusted brand for me. They've been around forever. So like you kind of been focusing on selling the right product for the right person. So a lot of this is boiling down to knowing the patient needs, knowing your cannabinoids and terpenes, and knowing your grower and like what's on the shelf. Sometimes you're sold out or whatever. Um,
And that's the other thing is like until 2 weeks ago, we didn't have anything on display. Zero display, no flour, no edibles, no nothing on display because we wanted to reduce the time that people were in the store and we wanted to stop people from like gathering and breathing on each other, right? So that was another challenge. Is like people come in, they do a 360, be like, where's the weed? Like what's that? Where is everything? And I'm like, I'm the menu. Look, talk to me. I'll make it happen. So that's been another hurdle is building trust in the individuals, that usually like to browse around and make their own decisions is like, trust me to help you make your decision is another thing. So
we kind of talked on touched on a little bit before about trying to get people in and out within 5 minutes and making it more transactional. And so since the pandemic, have you been trained differently, and how were you able to recommend or choose the right products in such a short period of time?
I mean, what I tell people when they come in is like, give me a couple keywords and let me run with it. Like sativa, indica, pre-roll, edible, like just give me some keywords. I'll go grab some stuff. I'll bring it back. I'll maybe give people like 3 or 4 options and then describe them all and then let them choose from there. And usually people are like, okay, this is enough options for me. I'll take this. And then they're out. And then, of course, there's some that want to see more and more and more. And we kind of just had to politely remind them, hey, like, there's a pandemic going on. Maybe we should be more efficient about this, right? And that's definitely calmed down a little bit. Like the first couple months were really edgy about that. It's kind of more relaxed now in a way. So I'll take more time with people that need it, but it's about efficiency at the end of the day.
Do you feel like most people want to order online and not deal with being in the store for a long time and asking all those questions? How have the numbers changed from online ordering and walk-in year over year? Where is it the numbers at for online ordering and walk-in stores on the average day? Is it
Um, I mean, the big thing about dockside is we offer 10% off every time you order online. And I tell literally everyone that because you save money, it's efficient. I make sure and tell people, hey, you can still ask questions when you get here. You're not necessarily committed to what you order. Like it'd be cool if you did that. But I mean, we're customer focused at the end of the day and we just want to make people happy. So whatever that takes. But and the efficient thing about online ordering too is like you can actually see everything. When we didn't have anything on display, you could look at the whole menu, put a nice big order together, and then pick and choose from there. So yeah, I mean, online orders have increased. I'd say they're probably like 25-30% of what of the daily sales we have. So yeah.
I've noticed in Washington, we kind of go out and we buy what we want when we want it.
Right.
So it's not, we don't see kind of the huge waves. It's just like people just go in there because it's convenient. And I
Right.
think we're maybe the most normalized state when it comes down to price and convenience are the main factors for traditional buying behavior. I think cannabis is picking that up pretty quick in Washington. So you seeing the amount of people relatively the same amount of walk-ins, or are they kind of coming in and going online? What's the walk-in traffic like?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely still steady. It's definitely I'd say like now, like in the summer, it was less for sure. It was less for sure. Now it's kind of going back to normal. Where, yeah, we definitely have a lot of walk-ins. The thing about Dockside too is we're the most highly reviewed shop on Google, so we actually get a lot of out-of-town people because they land and then they immediately look up weed shops, and we're one of the first ones that pops up. So some of our days, like half of the people are traveling. They're from out of town. They're either staying for a couple days, like we're their first or last stop, right? So that's been a huge influence too, especially this last month. There was a lot of people traveling. I think they were just trying to get out of their normal routine and get out from wherever they were. So that's been a huge thing for us too.
Hmm. Yeah, there's a guy I know that's going to come up from LA for a birthday party. I'm like, why would you pick Seattle if you're in
Right.
LA, especially, in the winter time? But yeah, we still do kind of see some tourism, but not all that much. But when they do come into the store and they ask you about a particular product, I'm curious. I mean, there is an importance of bud tenders, right? So uh, it's been said that those who spend more per week on cannabis and consume more frequently have a higher opinion of bud tenders and follow the recommendations more often, and which is significant because there's a lot of markets, as much as that have 3/4 of their sales come from those types of users. And so wondering if you can kind of quantify how important bud tenders are to cannabis brands, even more so now that they're being forced to go online without interacting with you first. How have those sales changed, especially with uh, disposable income? Like, there's a lot of people who don't have jobs and they were only given $1,200 one time. Are people shifting their preferences to something cheaper? And and how have your referrals adjusted?
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing a cannabis company can do to build trust in both the consumer and the bud tenders is transparency. Like, tell me about your grow. Tell me about what pesticides you're using or not using, right? And transparency is that. So even once people order something online, I'll tell them about the product before they get it. And I think just a bud tender communicating that knowledge is what builds trust, right? And after they come in on a weekly basis a couple times, they realize, hey, these people actually know what they're talking about. It's not just this is fire, buy it. It's about the facts. It's about the information that we get from the producers, and communicating that is what builds that trust.
So you're saying that when somebody buys it online, you'd walk up and you'd make an offhand comment about what they bought, whether it was good or bad, or if there's an alternative, and you just
Right.
kind of make
Make
that.
sure they're familiar. That's what I asked them. Like, hey, are you familiar with all these products? Do you have any questions about them?
And
And
that's very traditional. If, like, whenever you go to a pharmacy, they ask the same questions. Have you ever used this? Do you have any questions about whatever pill you're buying, or whatever the pharmacy is selling you?
right.
Very similar.
Yeah, exactly. And like with cannabis too, it's like we were talking about the waves earlier. Like when we were super low in July and August, people come in like, hey, where's this? Where's this? I haven't seen this in a while. And what I started telling them was, hey, cannabis plants 8 to 10 weeks just to grow, just to grow. And then you have to process, you have to package, you have to do all that after it. And a lot of people did not know that. They
Hmm.
didn't know that it was really that labor intensive. They were kind of taken aback. Um, and that's why I tell people, I'm like, hey, this ain't a grocery store. This ain't Safeway. You can't just get your Cocoa Puffs every time you come in. You got to be a little bit more flexible. So also just providing that information about the industry kind of gets people more informed. Yeah.
Hmm. That's good stuff. All right. I'm moving along here about budtenders are kind of the gatekeeper to the billion-dollar cannabis industry. Um, so it looks like BDS Analytics, they tracked over 1,000 cannabis brands producing over 45,000 unique products in a 12-month span. Colorado only had 274 brands producing 11,000 products, while Oregon had 431 brands making 10,000 products. So some retail stores, they see a lot of products offering only just a handful of farms, but many have a stock of many, many companies.
Right.
And so you guys could have somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 different products in each store locations. And so wondering, how does a customer wade through all those thousands of products and arrive at a possible choice, especially, right now when they might not feel comfortable hanging out in a store?
Right. Right. And again, that comes to efficiency, and it's a bud tender's responsibility to ask the correct questions. Like, how do you want to feel? Like, what are you doing when you're using, right? Like, are you at home? Well, yeah, they're at home. They're at home right now. But like, basically, yeah, what is the vibe you want? What's the what's the end goal of this product? And then I asked, like, before I even grab product, I asked like 5 or 6 questions, because I'm literally just trying to get to know what the end goal is for that individual. And then from there, I can kind of hone in on, hey, is it this genetic? Is it this edible? Is it this tincture? Like, whatever that is. So again, just a bud tender asking the correct questions, and hopefully the customer has good responses, then go from there.
What compels you about Fairwinds, and why would you recommend not just Fairwinds, but what compels you about a product or brand to recommend it to customers? You said transparency.
Transparency is kind of the biggest one. I mean, Fairwinds, for example, it's all in-house production, so it's controlled from seed to sale. That's a big thing. Like, I make an effort to try as much as I can and learn as much about the products as I can before I sell it. So having that knowledge and communicating it compels me to sell it. So again, that's transparency. But at the end of the day, for me, it's about approaching each individual differently to their needs, right? So at Dockside, I'm comfortable with 99% of the products there, right? Like, and budget is another thing. It's like, okay, what's your budget? I can get you the best thing for that number, right? So what compels me is just consistency and yeah, the individual's needs. That's it.
Are you seeing that the budget is even more of an impact now, with a lot of people being furloughed, laid off, without a job? Are you seeing disposable income impacting the purchasing behavior even more? Because
Yeah.
I want to know, like, the loyalty rewards and repeat sales are important, but I feel like they're going to do that because they don't have as much money and they don't want to be in the store. So I feel like the pandemic is more of a culprit for online sales than the discount. And so I'm wondering what's driving that. Is it people's discretionary income is a lot lower, or is it the loyalty rewards and online sales that are driving repeat sales?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. Like, I think it's a little bit of both. No matter what, like, I mean, we have eights ranging from like 12 to 60, right? So depending on your budget, you could be happy with anything in that range. I think a lot of people, because when you buy bulk, you get like a little bit of a price per gram discount too, right? Just from the producer. So I if someone really likes something, I'm like, hey, get as much as you can. Get as much as you can, because it's not going to be here. Like, it's not going to be here for that long. So kind of just being straightforward with customers about how much money they do have to spend on this, is a big thing. And yeah, just again, giving people all the opportunities to save money is what I do every day. Are you signed up for the rewards program? Are you ordering online? Have you thought about trying this company instead, because it's a better value for that, you know?
What about mishaps? Like, you've probably seen a lot of other stores that turn the packaging around so they can read the THC percentages on the back, and so the branding just gets totally thrown out the window. I'm wondering, with there's a lot of companies that spend a lot of money for production and marketing and packaging. And so we're still seeing some stores displaying that product turnover so the budtenders can see the strain name and potency and testing results on the back. So that would be considered a massive blunder in any traditional retail outlet, and a lot of it is being dismissed because it's a nascent industry. So similar to the packaging being turned around, what other mishaps have you seen recently?
Oh, um, well, I guess, I mean, because, well, for the majority of the year, again, we didn't have anything on display, so there wasn't really there wasn't as much necessity in branding importance, because when people walk in normally, well, now at least, like, they come in, they see all the flower. They see all the flower packaging, and maybe they're drawn to one or the other based on what the packaging looks like. When we didn't have anything on display, it didn't go off branding. It went off my opinion about what I thought the customer wanted. So like the branding wasn't even a question. It wasn't even thought about for most of this year. And on that note too, so Dockside did a little marketing thing in September. We had these back to school pamphlets that kind of broke down growing processes, testing processes, and just gave people more of an insight about the industry. My favorite thing to show people was every test batch was it's one bud out of 5 pounds, right? So that was another thing that I would communicate, being like, hey, maybe that THC percentage is not super important because this is how it's tested. So I think, again, just drawing people to the correct information so they can make an educated decision. That was the thing.
Mhm. We've seen delivery kind of drive a lot of sales in places like California. A lot of people are getting that delivered rather than going out and getting it themselves. So I'm wondering, with a lot of restaurants adding touch screens for ordering, how the future with vending machines and online orders, the touch screens, the delivery, all of that, how are brands going to differentiate or stand out without budtender recommendations?
Right.
How's that world going to look like?
Man, so yeah, that's been another thing this year is like a lot of people have called and been like, hey, can you deliver this? Like, I don't want to leave my house because like people were scared, right? So I got that question all the time. And I think like that is going to be a necessity going forward in this industry. How can a brand stand out? I think it's going to be man, somehow providing all the information I can through a web-based ordering system, right? So like, let's say you want Royal Tree Middle Fork, right? So you click on that, right? And then it should come up with like the genetics, the growing practices. It should come up with the test results, the size availability, maybe a direct link to the grower, so they can provide the information. And I think what would be really cool to see is somehow live web-based bud tending, where like maybe me at the store, I have specific days where I am just on the computer talking to people. Like that would be insane. That would be so cool. I can't even like think about how that would work, but that would be cool.
So Sean Kemp's new rec shop outside, there's a mural, and if you use your phone and you go over that, certain areas will through this app that's being developed by Scott McKinley of Dab Roast and Level 5 Interactive, that'll pop up this this app on your phone to give that same type of information. So it's not quite, the virtual reality where Princess Leia is a little figure or whatever. We're not quite there yet, but it is an interesting concept to where you could take your phone, hover over, whether it's newspaper, magazine, a mural on a building, or a QR code on the computer, and have somebody like Alec at Dockside pop up and give that information. I would think that would make a dramatic impact and definitely be a differentiator on branding for sure, and get that same kind of personalization.
Right. And yeah, I think like what this all comes down to is an individual who uses cannabis, if they are serious about their use, then they have the responsibility to educate themselves too. They can't just rely on, the people who work in the industry. Like, yeah, it'd be nice, but I think there's so much information. There's so many things that aren't known about cannabis to the general public that it's just a lot of information to get through. So as an individual consumer, taking the effort to look up your products, look up your brands, figure out what you think is important as an individual, and then going from there. So
have you been at Dockside for all 4 years?
No, so I have about 18 months at Dockside, and I worked at Origins Cannabis for about 2 years.
Okay.
I was in West Seattle, down in Soto now.
So you still have outlived the average. So according to a business intelligence platform Headset, uh, in terms of the data that they collected in Colorado and Washington State, it showed that 30% of budtenders had a turnover. They left their job during 12-month period.
Gotcha.
So we found that turnover was extremely common and often happened before new hires could even settle into their workplace. There's also a lot of turnover spikes that tended to follow busy seasons like the summertime.
Right.
So what's your trick to outliving the average employee, and how could a business establish a standard operating procedure for new employees to stick around as long as you have?
I mean, for me personally, I'm in this industry because I believe in this plan. I believe it can help a lot of people. I think it can change lives. I think it can help this entire world if the right people are behind it. So I'm in it for the long haul, and that's why I'm committed. I mean, I didn't have, between Origins and Dockside, I had a lot of time where I didn't have a job, and I had to dig into my savings because I was looking for the correct position. And that's why I ended up at Dockside. And I've flourished so much there because they trust me and they know that I'm passionate. Cannabis retail is a very intense, fast-paced environment. And because the general public is kind of new to cannabis retail, I think that's where a lot of friction happens, is a budtender communicating to a customer all the necessary information in a timely manner, especially this year. That is, I think, what people get so stressed out about. And that's probably why there's a lot of turnover. Yeah.
Does that affect growth? I mean, so if someone comes in and they're expecting a product to be on the shelf and it's not, that's one thing, because they can always go to their trusted budtender. But if their budtender isn't there, is that going to impact growth?
I think in some ways, yes. The beauty of the cannabis industry, I mean, like, I think a lot of people that work at Dockside, they've worked in other cannabis jobs, either processing or bud tending. So I feel like sometimes 502 retailers have, strict expectations of what sales should be, what ADS should be. And if those aren't met, then maybe there's some friction there, and that's why people bounce around. But I mean, a couple of us at Dockside, we've had multiple positions at multiple 502 operations. So I think, does that affect growth? Not necessarily. But it just comes down to the individual at the end of the day. Like, how passionate are they? Are they committed to this industry? Are they just in it for the discount? That's kind of the differences there.
What are some technology or tools that, aside from, some kind of virtual reality tool, is there anything else that could help people make decisions on recommendations or get in front of a bud tender before they make a decision? Either technology that exists yet or doesn't. Like, what is some kind of ideal technology to help people make that recommendation in an age where there is delivery and online ordering and they can't or don't want to get in front of a bud tender?
So that's a tough question. I think, like, maybe what I recommend to people what I focus on a lot, especially for flower, is genetics, right? Like, maybe we don't have Blue Dream. Do we have a blueberry genetic? Yes. Do we have a haze genetic? So, for example, I'll tell people to go to seedfinder.com so they can look up the family trees of those genetics. And that's just one part of it. Like, what do these genetics do? Like, what is the terpene profile based on who you are? How is this going to affect you, right? So I think maybe some sort of database where people can input what they've had before, how they've responded to it, and then from there, maybe that database can recommend similar products, similar genetics, so they can move forward with their use. And the tough part is that requires people to provide that input, provide that information, and not everyone cares enough to do that. But yeah, maybe just some sort of virtual weed assistant, like a butler, like a weed butler, but on the internet somehow.
So although delivery might take away, some not sales but interactions and recommendations, I think that it's probably going to be pushed forward. Whereas the whole marijuana lounge thing has definitely been sidetracked. There's absolutely no movement on that right now. People in the House and Senate are not interested in debating on whether or not people should get together inside of a cannabis cafe.
Right.
So, do you think that's going to pass this year? Do you think that'll get fast tracked for delivery in Washington State?
I mean, fingers crossed. I hope it is. I think it'll open up a new avenue. I mean, at least what I would like to see is maybe delivery specifically for medical patients, people that can't risk leaving their house. They're disabled. Maybe they physically cannot go and leave. So, like, and that would take some pressure off the designated providers who come down to the store too, because a lot of things that happen with when a designated provider comes down to the store, I have to be very specific about what I ask, what those patients' needs are. And sometimes the designated provider knows, sometimes they don't. So maybe at least starting out with delivery specifically for medical patients that aren't able to come in, I think would be like a good, test run to see how it would do for the average consumer.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, there's been a few other laws in Washington that have kind of been, pretty funky, banning CBD in August of 2018, and then one of them that failed was reducing concentrates to 10%, which would, pretty much eliminate that whole category because it's no longer a concentrate.
I would undercut 40% of the industry, which is insane.
I think the edibles market would have been impacted by 70% when another law changing, the shapes and colors, saying that it was too attractive to children. All of these laws are pretty crazy and can impact a lot of businesses. But one of them that directly impacts you would have been the requirement to be part of a union. Did that make its rounds within the budtender community of having to unionize and being part of a union?
I mean, it was talked about. It wasn't really ever set in. I think Have a Heart, well, now Cannabis Story, they were the first people to introduce a union in the cannabis industry, which I think is amazing. Would it provide some protection to us? I think so. I think the number one thing is, I sort of hesitate to say this, but it's true. The people that make these laws, they don't know anything about weed. They know laws, they know sales, they know that, right? They don't know anything about this plant and how it actually interacts with the community, right? And again, like convincing skeptics about the positive impact of cannabis. That's why I'm there, right? So the Cannabis Alliance, for example, they work as an intermediary to try and provide the lawmakers that information. So I think that is going to be important moving forward, is just educating on up, educating the people making the laws about what this industry is and what people care about in it, and then move forward from there.
What else can the industry do, or companies? What can they do to try and make sure that employees don't walk out the door? Because I think that's part of unionizing, is adding benefits to budtenders. So what's something that companies and the industry can do to try and limit the amount of turnover?
I mean, I think fair pay. Fair pay is the number one thing. I mean, all the budtenders were on hourly, right? Dockside, for example, they offer health benefits, health insurance. This year, our PTO rate increased. So instead of 1 hour per 40 hours, it's 1.5. So just supporting the individuals with those things and operating like any other company would, like Amazon would or Best Buy would or any of that, right? Um, I think a lot of companies kind of get by on like, hey, you get 40% off weed. Isn't that enough, right? I think a lot of companies just get by doing that, but I think that's not enough. It's a real job and it's a difficult job, and I think recognizing that for each company is going to be important.
What if companies implemented Team Icon, an acronym? It's an acronym that I coined.
Right.
With the exception of being paid well and promoted, Team Icon is if an employer trusts you, empowers you, appreciates you, mentors, keeps you involved, challenged, and on a mission. So if companies were to implement Team Icon, essentially you would be in a position where you would be able to be paid well because that would just happen naturally, as well as whatever promotion they wanted to throw at you. So if a company trusted, empowered, appreciated, mentored, involved, challenged, and kept you on a mission, would that be enough to keep you around?
Yeah, I think absolutely, like a company being like telling each individual that they are important, that we care about you, that we care about how you do here. And that's why I like working at Dockside so much, is because I know that that company has my back. I know that my feedback from the ground floor is heard. Um, and I think that's what a lot of companies can do moving forward, is just putting more trust in their employees and allowing them to flourish. Because if you just shove ADS down our throat every day, it's not going to be that fun, right? We're going to be stressed out about it. It's like, at the end of the day, that's not my goal. So yeah, I think just empowering your employees, making sure they know that they're important and that they matter, and reflecting that in their practices.
Yeah, back to the essential employee rather than being disposable and being actually essential. You got to kind of put actions behind those words in order to differentiate the fact that you're disposable.
Right. Exactly.
And that kind of comes with care and that whole thing of Team Icon. Are companies like Dockside, are they ramping up employment? This kind of feels like the eye of the storm before any election results happen, before any second wave, if a second wave happens. What's happening right now? Are companies with harvest season taking advantage of that and putting as many products on the shelf as they can, because it's about to be Green Wednesday coming up before Thanksgiving, another big seller next to 420? What's happening behind the scenes?
Yeah, so our we have brought in multiple new producers across all different price points in terms of edibles, flower, the whole deal. So we've expanded our inventory a lot over the past couple months, and that's just, yeah, again, to just provide more security and having enough products to make everyone happy. So I think our weekly deliveries have increased in the past 2 months, for every product range. Because when we were almost out of product for those 2 months, that was like the most hectic. Because every time someone would ask me a question, I'd be like, no, we don't have that. No, we don't have that. No, we don't have that. So providing, again, just increasing the amount of deliveries and variety of producers. That's what we've done in our store to assure that we have the inventory that's necessary.
And is that going to shift as we get closer? Because I know that I really cut back on what I was burning, the consumption method of joints or blunts or whatever. I was going more towards topicals, tinctures, and I guess I wasn't doing edibles, but mostly just tinctures, I suppose. So are those products going to be shifting? Are you guys going to be giving more shelf life or shelf space to those products that did really well last March? So have you guys shifted the way that you guys store products, or how has that been working?
We've definitely had to become more efficient in our inventory space. At Dockside Soda, at least, the whole back wall with drawers, there's about like 30 drawers that are committed to flower now. We have like about four new shelves just for inventory of edibles, right? So we've definitely had to change the organization of the store to compensate for the capacity we're at now. We have two people doing receiving, so they can get everything organized, stocked, ready to sell. So yeah, we've just ramped up how we do inventory, just as a reaction to how this year has been. Um, that's it. Yeah.
Driving sales, is that going to be on the driving sales for the less sold products like the topicals, as people reverted to edibles and less topicals, maybe as a result of working from home and or a shift in disposable income or lack thereof? It's a more expensive product. So is that on the burden of the store or the manufacturer to reduce price to increase sales? And is that something that you guys are looking at for things like, topicals that haven't sold well over the last year?
Yeah. Yeah. For instance, we brought in a new topical manufacturer, Wild Mint, for a bit. They had a pretty good range of products. They had really high CBD content for the price too. I definitely sold well for a while. So I think basically this year is what we've had to do is not just rely on the one or two companies we usually have. We've had to actually bring in a couple more to fill the gaps. At least topicals have a pretty damn good shelf life, so that's amazing. I don't really think about that a lot, at least. But yeah, providing yeah, just again making sure we have a range of companies that can provide the needs has been a big thing for us.
Any other trends or anything else that you've seen that we haven't discussed that you want to talk about before we wrap this up?
Man, I think really at the end of the day, right now, like prior pandemic, it was a buyer's market. It was a buyer's market. Now it's a seller's market. Like demand has increased so much that at least out to dockside, we're not ordering a lot of single grams of flour anymore because a lot of them will sit. A lot of them will sit for a long time because people are buying so much bulk. And that's somewhat of a blessing and a challenge because I'll have to do a little more salesmanship to like convince people, yes, this eighth is worth it. But at the end of the day, man, at the end of the day, like I'm there to help people, and that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna help each individual based on what I think they need or what they think they need, and provide a good experience. And I think this year, especially, has made me a lot more compassionate. Made me a lot more compassionate to each individual's struggle. You know, just to provide them the relief they need. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had to be a lot more patient with people and show a lot more, I guess, empathy
Yeah.
and yeah, I have to reduce my quickness to be impatient with some folks.
Right.
Just because it's a tough time for a lot of people. You have no idea what they're going through, and so to understand that and be more compassionate, like you said, is important. So if not that, I'll just smoke more cannabis, and that always helps too.
That's a good. That's a good point.
So, Alec, where can people reach you at? If they got any questions, they can obviously go down to Dockside in Soto, Seattle, Washington. But is there any social media that you want to throw out there?
I make an effort not to be on social media.
That's smart.
Possible. I'm on Facebook. I'm at Dockside Wednesday through Sunday. People can always come in and talk to me and ask me questions. They can call the store, see if I'm there. But no matter what, I trust my coworkers too. If I'm not there, I think people can talk to anyone at Dockside and feel welcome and friendly and get the right things they want. Yeah, man, that's it.
Yeah, I like the little museum you guys got in there too for multiple reasons. I like the idea of having a museum because there's a tax write-off for that. So that whole portion that whole thing sits in is
Right.
there's zero taxes on that whole square footage. So love that concept. Plus, it's obviously good for tourism to kind of come in and see really old tinctures and little medical bottles and all that old the tooling and everything. So it's really cool to see, and everyone in there has always been helpful, friendly. So yeah, good shop. We'll have all those links in the show notes. So I want to thank my guest Alec Langston with Dockside Co-op. He's been in there for at least 4 years and is now medical marijuana consultant. So whether you got rec or medical questions, go down to Soto and see Alec.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out. With that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.
Hello, hemp friends. This is your host, Morris, from Volume Up, the Let's Talk Hemp podcast, where we explore and discuss all things hemp all the time. From industrial to nutritional to therapeutic to lifestyle, hemp has a place and a home pretty much everywhere. Download episodes now of the Let's Talk Hemp podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Come get loud with me on Volume Up as we take industrial hemp to a whole new level in 2022 and beyond.